Have you ever found yourself in a tricky situation, wondering whether to store your ketchup in the fridge or leave it in the cupboard? Fear not, we're here to settle this age-old question once and for all. Whether you're a fridge fanatic or a cupboard connoisseur, we can all agree that no one likes throwing away food that's gone bad. Today's video will be the ultimate guide to food storage. From cheeses to meats to condiments and butter, we've got the inside scoop on what belongs in the fridge. So grab a snack, preferably one that's been stored properly, and let's dive into the world of food storage. Number 1. Ketchup. Do you love ketchup? According to a survey, about 309 million Americans reported using ketchup in 2020. The tangy, sweet, and delicious condiment is a staple in many households. It's the perfect pairing for burgers, fries, hot dogs, and even eggs. But this popular food needs to be treated with care if you want it to maintain its star status. And that means refrigerating it after opening, just like the famous company Heinz recommends. There's been a considerable debate about whether to leave the ketchup on the counter, but the staple brand Heinz has spoken up, saying it's best to keep it cool. Ketchup might be able to stay fresh with its natural acidity and shelf-stable status, but that doesn't mean it can't go bad. If you want your ketchup to be at its tangy, sweetest best, then refrigeration is the best way to go. Think about storing your ketchup in the fridge like giving it a luxurious vacation spot, a place to kick back and relax in a cool and comfortable environment. And let's not forget about the 6-month rule. Just as we shouldn't overstay our welcome on vacation, ketchup shouldn't hang around in the fridge for too long. So here's the deal. If you really want to get the most out of this yummy condiment, it's best to consume it within 6 months of opening. Here's a study that might help us understand why storing ketchup in the fridge is necessary. In this study, researchers made ketchup using a combination of tomato and mushroom pulp. The researchers tested different combinations of these two foods too. However, as the researchers added more mushroom pulp, the ketchup had less vitamin C and sugar, but more protein and fiber. During storage, the ketchup changed in some ways, such as getting sweeter and losing some of its vitamin C. The changes were less noticeable when researchers stored ketchup in the refrigerator instead of at room temperature. Researchers also observed that the amount of bacteria in ketchup grew with time. Still, it occurred at a faster rate when kept at room temperature compared to being stored in the refrigerator. The study shows that ketchup's nutritional content and quality can change over time depending on how it's stored. Number 2. Eggs. Have you ever visited a market in another country and wondered why eggs aren't in the fridge? The answer has to do everything with a pesky bacteria called salmonella. The eggs are thoroughly washed and refrigerated in the US to prevent contamination. But in other parts of the world, like Europe, eggs are sold at room temperature because they're not required to undergo extensive washing, leaving the protective coating intact. So what's the deal with salmonella? It's a sneaky bacteria that lurks on the shells and inside eggs. Consuming eggs contaminated with salmonella can make you feel ill, resulting in symptoms such as vomiting, fever, stomach cramps, and diarrhea. It can be super dangerous and even deadly for certain people like older adults, kids, and those with weakened immune systems. It's pretty difficult to predict if an egg is infected by looking at it. But the good news is you can reduce your risk of getting sick from salmonella by taking a few simple measures. Eggs love a cool environment, so store them in the fridge at 40 degrees Fahrenheit or below. Use a refrigerator thermometer to check the temperature and ensure that it stays within this range. Eggs are like little sponges and can absorb smells and flavors from other foods. So keeping them in their original carton is best, or in a covered container if preferred. Use them within 3 weeks for best quality, or by the expiration date on the carton. Freezing eggs in their shells is a big no. Instead, beat the yolks and whites together to freeze whole eggs or freeze egg whites separately. They can stay fresh for up to a year. If you have a leftover egg dish, pop them in the fridge and use them within 3 to 4 days. But if it's a big batch, split it into smaller containers for quicker cooling, because no one likes a soggy egg. If you have hard-boiled eggs, they can be safely stored in the fridge for up to a week. People often prefer placing eggs in the fridge door, but we recommend placing them in the coldest part of your fridge. And once an egg is refrigerated, keeping it in the fridge is vital. A cool egg that drops to room temperature can start to sweat and create a breeding ground for bacteria to enter through the porous shell. A study compared the quality of eggs stored under 4 conditions: unwashed and refrigerated, unwashed and at room temperature, washed and refrigerated, and washed, coated with mineral oil, and refrigerated. The study found that refrigerated eggs, whether washed or oiled, maintain their high quality after 15 weeks. However, eggs stored at room temperature quickly lost quality, with unwashed eggs losing 15% of their weight over the 15 weeks. This is why refrigerating eggs is paramount. So, whether you're enjoying a delicious omelet or whipping up batches of brownies, remember to keep those eggs cool. Number 3. Cheese. Almost everyone loves this dairy product, but with so many varieties and storage rules, it can take a lot of work to know how to keep your cheese at its best. Don't worry though, we've got you covered. First, let's talk about soft cheeses. These include delicate cheeses such as cream cheese, cottage cheese, shredded cheese, and goat cheese. These need to be kept cool in the fridge to stay safe to eat. They can remain fresh for up to a week, with cream cheese staying fresh for up to 2 weeks. Let's move on to the tougher ones, the hard cheeses. Cheddar, American, and Parmesan are a few to name. These cheeses are like the superhero of the dairy world. You don't need to refrigerate them for safety, but they'll last even longer if you do. Unopened hard cheeses can stay fresh in the fridge for up to 6 months. But once you open them, they'll be tasty for about 3 to 4 weeks only. Shredded hard cheeses will last for about a month after opening. Now, we all know that feeling when you have too much cheese on your hands. It happens to the best of us. Don't fret. The freezer can be your friend. Ricotta, cottage, and cream cheeses might not freeze well, but others do stay fresh when frozen. Pop them in the freezer and they'll be happy campers for up to 6 months. So, follow this cheese storage lowdown and enjoy fresh cheeses in your sandwiches, pastas, or pizzas whenever you please. Number 4. Meat. The idea of eating spoiled meat can be scary because improper handling and storage can cause foodborne illness. A juicy steak or mouth-watering chicken can be tempting, but don't leave it on the counter for too long. Remember, refrigeration slows down bacterial growth but doesn't prevent it entirely. So, use your food promptly before it goes bad. For raw meats, like ground beef or chicken, keep them refrigerated for 1 to 2 days before cooking or freezing. Delicious beef, veal, lamb, and pork roast steaks and chops can last 3 to 5 days in the fridge before it's time to throw them away. After you've cooked up a storm in the kitchen, you might be tempted to save some leftovers, but be careful not to leave cooked meat, poultry, or seafood in the fridge for too long. We recommend only 3 to 4 days tops. Number 5. Horseradish. How often do you have horseradish? This versatile herb can add some serious flavor and nutrition to your meals. But like ketchup, you should store horseradish properly. The best time to purchase horseradish is in the spring when it's freshest and firmest. But don't worry if you miss the boat. You can find fresh horseradish year-round in most produce sections. Once you have some fresh horseradish, store it in a plastic bag in the fridge. If you've already grated or ground your horseradish, you can keep it fresh by storing it in vinegar or cream. And if you have any leftover roots, throw them in the freezer for up to 6 months. But what about prepared horseradish? Well, fear not. You can store prepared horseradish in the fridge for 3 to 4 months. It comes in various delicious forms, like vinegar, salt, mustard, or mayonnaise spread. However, plain mustard horseradish spreads can stay in the fridge for 12 months once opened. Now, with these tips, you might discover a new favorite way to add a zing of freshness to your meals. Number 6. Maple syrup. When it comes to pancakes, nothing is more quintessential than a drizzle of sweet, golden maple syrup. Proper storage can make your syrup last longer. You might rarely see even the biggest maple syrup lovers use a whole container in one go. So, how can you keep your syrup fresh for longer? Here's a scientific way to go about it. Pure maple syrup can last a year or more when stored properly. A study found fungi did not develop in maple syrup stored at a temperature of 4 degrees Celsius for 12 months. But they did grow in syrup stored for the same duration at higher temperatures of 24 degrees Celsius and 30 degrees Celsius. But once you open that bottle, it's a different story. Exposure to air means that your syrup will start to deteriorate. According to experts, maple syrup has 3 main enemies: air, time, and temperature. That's why keeping your syrup in an airtight container in the refrigerator is essential. But there's more to it. Did you know that plastic syrup bottles can actually breathe, which can lead to spoilage? We recommend repackaging plastic syrup bottles into a glass jar if you plan to store them for over 3 months. Here's another thing to try to remember. If you see mold in your maple syrup, don't try to salvage it by removing and reheating it. Some microorganisms can produce toxins that could make you sick, so discarding the product is best. Number 7. Butter and margarine. Many people like their butter soft and spreadable, so they leave it on the counter. And it helps when you're in a time crunch. You can't wait for it to soften up every time you need a pat of butter for your toast. But you cannot leave all kinds of butter on the countertop because not all are created equally. Pasteurized butter, the variety you'll find at the grocery store, is not always a time temperature control for safety or TCS food, which means it doesn't have to be refrigerated to be safe. Non-TCS butter has adequate fat and salt content to inhibit bacterial growth, making it safe to store at room temperature. However, if you've got a fancy modified butter that's been whipped, has added enhancers, or has reduced salt, it might be more prone to bacterial growth and should be refrigerated. Leaving butter out on the counter does come with some risks. It can quickly become contaminated with environmental elements, like dust and TCS food, which can turn into TCS food. After a while, the fat in the butter can break down and cause it to become rancid, which is not great to look at and even tastes terrible. Research says that if you're going through butter quickly and it's not fancy modified butter, leaving it out on the counter for up to 2 days is safe. Keep it covered and use it within a few days for best quality. Margarine also needs to be kept in the fridge. Now that we've sorted out the butter storage, who's up for some popcorn? Did you know popcorn is one of the few foods that doesn't considerably contribute to weight gain? It can even be diabetic friendly. Want more such fantastic healthy snack options? Then check out videos on 12 foods you can eat a lot of that don't make you gain weight, or 18 healthy diabetic-friendly snacks you should be eating. Go ahead, click one, or better yet, watch both and learn about foods that keep your taste buds happy and your waistline in check. What foods do you store in the fridge? Let us know in the comments below.